Can you even imagine what it's like to meet your identical twin sister for the very first time at 18 years old? To look into a face that is undeniably your own, yet belongs to a complete stranger? That's exactly what happened to me, and trust me, it was nothing short of shocking, even traumatizing in ways I'm still trying to unpack. I mean, my entire life, my entire identity, was built on a lie. Was I wrong for the way I reacted, for the anger that consumed me, or for seeking answers that shattered everything I thought I knew? Tell me honestly, what would you have done in my shoes? My story, the one I thought was my story, began like any other. I grew up in a comfortable, loving home with two wonderful parents, Mark and Sarah. They were attentive, supportive, and everything a child could ask for. Our house was always filled with laughter, the smell of my mom's baking, and the comforting presence of my dad fixing something in the garage. I was an only child, and I cherished that status, enjoying all the attention and resources that came with it. I had a normal childhood, went to a good school, had friends, and excelled in my studies. I was looking forward to college, planning a future in graphic design, and had my whole life mapped out. Or so I thought. The first crack in my perfectly constructed reality appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly, just after my 18th birthday. My parents had thrown me a huge party, a truly memorable night filled with family and friends. A few days later, while helping my mom clean out the attic, we stumbled upon an old, dusty box tucked away in a corner. It wasn't marked, but something about it drew my attention. My mom seemed a little too eager to push it aside, mumbling about old tax documents, but my curiosity was piqued. I insisted on looking, and that's when I found it, a faded, slightly crumpled birth certificate. My name was on it, but the date was off by a day, and more strikingly, it listed not one but two babies. Baby A and Baby B. My name was next to Baby A, and then there it was, another name next to Baby B. Emily. My heart started pounding. I looked at my mom, whose face had gone completely pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else I couldn't quite place. She tried to snatch the certificate away, but I held on tight, my mind racing. "Mom," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "who is Emily? And why does it say twins?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mom eventually broke down, tears streaming down her face as she confessed. It was a story she'd held onto for 18 years, a secret that had eaten away at her soul. She explained that I did indeed have an identical twin sister, Emily. She told me about the difficult birth, a premature delivery where I, Baby A, was healthy, but Emily, Baby B, was born with severe complications, much smaller and weaker. The doctors had told them Emily had a very low chance of survival, and if she did survive, she would likely have significant health issues. My parents, young and overwhelmed, were convinced that they wouldn't be able to provide adequate care for a child with such complex needs, especially while also raising a healthy newborn. In a moment of desperation, and what they claimed was love for both of us, they made an impossible decision. They allowed another couple, who had been struggling with infertility and were desperate for a child, to adopt Emily. They were told Emily's condition improved rapidly in the first few weeks, and the adopting parents were able to provide her with specialized care. My mom assured me they had believed they were doing the right thing, giving Emily a chance at a full life that they felt they couldn't provide. They swore they never wanted to hurt me, or Emily, and that they had grieved her absence every single day. I listened numb. The world tilted on its axis. Everything I knew, everything I believed about my life was a lie. I had a sister, an identical sister, and she was out there, somewhere, living a life I knew nothing about. My initial shock quickly morphed into a tidal wave of emotions: confusion, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss for a sister I never knew I had. My parents begged me not to search for her, to let the past stay buried, for everyone's sake. They were terrified of disrupting Emily's life, and of the pain it would cause her and her adoptive family if the truth came out this way. But how could I not? How could I just pretend she didn't exist? My own blood, a mirror image of myself, was out there. The idea consumed me. I felt like a piece of myself was missing, a void I hadn't even known existed until that moment. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. I spent days and a days, replaying my mom's confession, trying to reconcile the loving parents I knew with the people who had given away my twin sister. The anger festered, a hot, burning coal in my chest. How could they make such a monumental decision about my life, about our lives, without ever telling me? Didn't I deserve to know I had a sister? Didn't Emily deserve to know she had a twin? For weeks, I walked through my house like a ghost. I'd look at the photos of myself on the mantle, the one from my 5th birthday, the one from my 8th grade graduation. And instead of seeing a happy child, I saw a thief. I was the child who got to stay. I was the child who got the piano lessons, the brand new car on my 16th birthday, and the unconditional safety of knowing who my parents were. Meanwhile, Emily was where? Was she happy? Was she even alive? Every time my mother tried to place a hand on my shoulder, or my father tried to crack a joke to lighten the mood, I felt a physical revulsion. They had curated a perfect life for me by editing out the most important person I should have known. I started having these vivid dreams where I was looking into a mirror, but the reflection wouldn't move when I did. The reflection would just stand there, weeping, reaching out a hand that hit the glass and couldn't break through. I woke up screaming more than once. My parents tried to get me into therapy, but I refused. What was a therapist going to tell me? That it's okay my parents treated my sister like an unwanted return at a department store? No. I needed the truth. I started digging through their digital lives. I waited until they were asleep and took my father's laptop. I'm not proud of it, but I felt I was owed this. I found an old email folder, buried deep in a subdirectory, titled Correspondence, 2006. Inside were emails from a woman named Clara. The tone was professional but heartbreakingly personal. Clara was Emily's adoptive mother. She sent updates. Emily's first steps, her first word, her first day of kindergarten. My parents had been receiving these updates for years. They hadn't just given her away and forgotten. They had watched her grow from a distance while pretending to me that she never existed. The latest email was from 3 years ago. It said Emily was thriving, that her health issues were a thing of the past, and that she was a gifted artist. There was an attachment, a photo of a 15-year-old girl sitting in an art studio, her face turned slightly away. Even from the side, I knew it was her. It was me. I felt a surge of adrenaline so strong I thought I might pass out. I copied Clara's email address and the city mentioned in the footer of the messages. The search was surprisingly easy thanks to social media. I found an Emily, with the same last name as the adoptive family, living in the city my parents mentioned. Her profile picture. It was like looking into a mirror. My heart literally leaped into my throat. It was me but not me. Her hair was a different style, her smile slightly different, but the eyes, the nose, the shape of her face, it was undeniably my twin. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. This was her. My sister. I spent hours poring over her profile, learning about her life. She seemed happy, surrounded by friends and family. She was into photography, loved hiking, and had a passion for animals. It was both comforting and incredibly painful to see her thriving, a life I could have shared. I saw pictures of her with her parents, Clara and David. They looked like kind people. They looked like they adored her. But every time I saw a family photo of them, I felt a pang of jealousy that she had them, and a pang of guilt that I had the biological ones. The next step was the hardest. How do you just introduce yourself to a twin sister you never knew existed? I drafted countless messages, deleted them all. The fear of rejection, of disrupting her life, was immense. But the urge to connect was stronger. Finally, I settled on a simple, straightforward message, tinged with honesty. I explained that I believed we might be related, that I had recently discovered some surprising information, and that I hoped she would be open to talking. I included my photo, just so she could see the uncanny resemblance. I hit send, my heart pounding like a drum. The wait was excruciating. Every notification sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Days turned into a week. I was starting to lose hope, convincing myself she either hadn't seen it, or worse, had seen it and dismissed it as a prank. Then one evening my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her message was cautious, but curious. She admitted she was shocked by my photo and the similarity, but she didn't believe she had a twin. She said her parents had always told her she was an only child, and that my story sounded like something out of a movie. She asked for more information for proof. I provided her with everything I had. The birth certificate, details about our shared birth date and hospital, and my parents' names. I also explained, as gently as I could, the circumstances of her adoption. I told her I understood if she was angry, but I truly just wanted to connect and understand. The communication became a flurry of messages, then phone calls. We spent hours talking, comparing notes, filling in the gaps of our lives. It was surreal. We discovered so many small similarities. Our love for spicy food, our quirky sense of humor, even the way we held our pens. It was like finding the missing piece of a puzzle I never knew was incomplete. She was understandably, incredibly upset about her parents' deception. Her adoptive parents, the people she had known and loved her whole life, had kept this secret from her. She felt betrayed, just as I had felt betrayed by our biological parents. We bonded over that shared sense of deception, finding solace in each other's experiences. We talked about our childhood fears. She used to have a recurring dream about a girl trapped in a glass box, and I nearly fell out of my chair because it was the same dream I'd had. We realized that even though we were miles apart, we had been connected by some invisible, spiritual tether. I started spending every waking moment on the phone with her. My parents tried to intervene, telling me I was obsessing, but I just looked at them with cold, dead eyes. You gave her away, I told my mother during one particularly nasty argument. You don't get a vote on how I find her. I began to notice things about myself that I hadn't realized were shared. We both had a tiny birthmark on our left ankles, shaped almost exactly the same. We both had a habit of biting our lips when we were deep in thought. Even our taste in music was eerily identical. She had the same underground indie playlist that I did. It was as if we were two halves of the same soul that had been forcibly ripped apart and scattered. The more we spoke, the more I realized that her life had been beautiful, but shadowed by a feeling of not belonging. She told me that she often felt like a guest in her own home. Despite how much her adoptive parents loved her, she felt like there was a secret she wasn't privy to, a whisper in the walls she couldn't quite hear. Finding me was like someone finally turning on the light in a dark room for her. The decision to meet in person was a natural progression. We picked a neutral location, a coffee shop in a city halfway between us. The day of the meeting, I was a bundle of nerves. I drove 3 hours in total silence, the radio off, my mind playing out 1,000 different scenarios. What if she hated me? What if she looked at me and only saw the life she was denied? What if the reality didn't live up to the expectation? But the moment I saw her walk in, it was like looking at a reflection. We both froze, staring at each other. There was an instant, undeniable connection. It was overwhelming, emotional, and strangely comforting. We hugged, a long, tearful embrace that felt like coming home. We spent hours talking, sharing stories, laughing and crying. It was the most profound experience of my life. I finally had a sister. But as the sun began to set and the coffee shop started to close, the gravity of what we were doing started to sink in. We weren't just two girls meeting for coffee. We were the living evidence of a massive, 18-year-old conspiracy. We sat in my car for another 2 hours after the shop closed, just staring at each other in the dim light of the street lamps. I feel like I'm dreaming, she whispered. I feel like if I blink, you'll disappear and I'll be back in that house with parents who aren't really mine. I gripped her hand, and it was the first time I felt truly whole. We talked about the logistics. We weren't just sisters, we were legal strangers. How do you integrate a twin into a life that was built to exclude them? We realized that the coming days would be a war against the lies our parents told us, and a war to define who we were on our own terms. We promised each other that no matter what the adults said, no matter how much they cried or pleaded for understanding, we would stand together. We made a pact that night. Total honesty, no matter how much it hurt. No more secrets. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was 18 years old, having just discovered I had an identical twin sister, and both our lives and the lives of our respective families were now in upheaval. The truth was out, and the consequences were unfolding. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted your parents immediately and demanded answers? Would you have tried to keep the peace and suppress your desire to meet your twin? Or would you have gone all in, seeking the truth and connection at any cost, even if it meant shattering established family dynamics? Tell me, what would you have done? After that initial, incredibly emotional meeting, Emily and I decided we needed to confront our respective parents. It felt like a necessary step for healing and for moving forward. I went home first. My parents were sitting in the living room, looking as if they were waiting for an execution. I didn't even sit down. I just held up my phone with a picture of Emily and me standing side by side. The silence was heavy. My mother started to sob, a deep, guttural sound of pure regret. My father tried to explain again, about the medical bills, about the fear, about how they thought they were giving us both a better life. I shouted at them. I told them they didn't have the right to play God with our lives. I told them that by protecting us, they had stolen 18 years of sisterhood from us. The fight lasted until dawn. I packed a bag and left. I couldn't stay in a house built on such a foundation of lies. I drove straight to Emily's city. She was waiting for me at a park, looking shell-shocked. Her confrontation was even more explosive. Her parents, Clara and David, were terrified. They hadn't just kept a secret. They had essentially bought a child and erased her past. Emily felt like her whole life was a curated lie. She realized that every time she had asked about her birth or her medical history, they had looked her in the eye and lied. The trust was completely shattered. She moved out too, staying with a friend for a few days before we decided to meet up again. The aftermath was messy, to say the least. There were strained phone calls, tearful apologies, and difficult conversations that lasted for weeks. Emily and I became each other's primary support system through it all. We leaned on each other, processing the emotional fallout together. We spent every weekend together, making up for lost time, sharing every detail of our lives, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. We discovered so many nuances of our personalities that were similar, and just as many that were uniquely ours. It was a beautiful, complicated unraveling of two lives that should have been one. The biggest challenge was navigating the two families. It was like trying to merge two completely separate worlds. My biological parents wanted to connect with Emily, to apologize and to form a relationship. They were desperate for a second chance. They started sending her letters, flowers, and even offered to pay for her tuition. But to Emily, they were strangers who had abandoned her. Emily's adoptive parents, while accepting of me, found it incredibly difficult to see my biological parents having any claim on her. They were defensive, territorial, and scared. It created a lot of tension, a sense of competition for Emily's affection, which was incredibly unfair to her. She was being pulled in 4 different directions by 4 people who all claimed to love her but had all, in some way, failed her. I remember one specific dinner, where both sets of parents insisted on meeting. It was a disaster. My mother kept staring at Emily with this creepy, longing intensity, while Clara sat there with her arms crossed, looking like she wanted to bolt the doors. My father tried to talk about shared history, and David snapped that the only history that mattered was the 18 years he spent actually raising her. Emily eventually stood up, slammed her hand on the table, and told them all to shut up. She told them that neither side was the hero of this story. She told them that they had all failed the most basic test of honesty. Things got even more complicated when we realized the legal ramifications. Because the adoption had been handled so quickly and privately, there were questions about the legality of the paperwork. My biological parents were terrified of legal action, and Emily's parents were terrified of losing their parental rights retroactively. It was a nightmare of lawyers and red tape. But through it all, Emily and I stayed focused on each other. We decided to take a gap year before college. We needed time to breathe, to understand who we were without the shadows of our parents' choices hanging over us. We took a road trip across the country, just the two of us. We visited all the places we had dreamed of going separately. We talked until our voices were hoarse. We laughed until we cried. And we cried until there were no tears left. We found out that Emily had a talent for singing, something I had never even tried. When she sang, it felt like I was hearing my own voice, but elevated. When I showed her my graphic design work, she pointed out details that only I would have noticed. We were mirrors, but with different colors. We started to realize that the 18 years apart hadn't just been a loss. They had created two unique individuals who could now choose to be together. My revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't a malicious act, but rather the undeniable truth. The truth itself was the biggest disruption, the most profound consequence for everyone who had kept it hidden. The revenge was simply Emily and I existing together, undeniable proof that their choices had far-reaching, unforeseen consequences. My parents had to live with the guilt of seeing the daughter they gave away, and Emily's adoptive parents had to grapple with the fact that their daughter now had a whole other side to her life they weren't part of. Our reunion forced everyone to confront their actions and their past. It wasn't about punishment, but about revelation and the inevitable reckoning that comes with long-held secrets. Over the next few months, the dynamic shifted. Emily and I realized that we couldn't fix our parents. They were flawed, broken people who had made a terrible mistake out of fear. We decided that our relationship had to come first, independent of them. We started a blog together, documenting our journey of finding each other, which actually went viral and helped us connect with other split twins around the world. It was healing to know we weren't alone. We also began legal proceedings to correct our birth certificates, a symbolic act of taking back our identities. We sat in a courtroom and watched as a judge signed the papers that finally acknowledged us as sisters. It was a small victory, but it felt like we had reclaimed our very existence. The transition wasn't easy. We had to learn how to be sisters in our late teens. There were arguments over clothes, over boys, over who got the last slice of pizza. The normal sibling stuff we had missed out on. But even those fights felt like a gift. They were the normal parts of life that had been stolen from us. We eventually moved into a small house near our university. We decorated it with photos of our journey, including that first blurry picture from the coffee shop. In the end, things slowly started to settle. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of awkwardness and underlying tension between the families, but Emily and I became inseparable. We started college together, even choosing the same major, and decided to get an apartment. We were finally able to share a life, to create new memories that would overshadow the painful beginning. We spent our 19th birthday together. The first one we actually celebrated on the same day, at the same time. It was a simple celebration, just the two of us and a small cake, but it was the most meaningful birthday I'd ever had. We looked at each other and realized that while our parents had given us life, we had given each other a future. It was a journey of discovery, not just about each other, but about ourselves. We learned about resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family, even if that family came in unexpected forms. We eventually allowed our parents back into our lives, but on our terms. No more secrets, no more lies. It took years of therapy, joint sessions, individual sessions, and family sessions, to even begin to bridge the gap. We still have Sunday dinners, but they are different now. There is a sense of transparency that wasn't there before. My parents have had to work hard to earn back my trust, and they are still working on it. Emily's parents have had to accept that they are not her only parents, and that their love must coexist with the reality of her birth. It's a fragile piece, but it's a real one. We've learned that family isn't just about blood, and it's not just about who raised you. It's about who stands by you when the truth comes crashing down. It's about the people who are willing to face the mess and help you clean it up. So that's my story. It's a messy, complicated tale of truth, betrayal, and the astonishing reunion with a sister I never knew I had. It taught me that secrets, no matter how well-intentioned, always have a way of coming to light, and that sometimes the greatest pain can lead to the most beautiful connections. I'm still figuring things out, but having Emily by my side makes everything feel a little less daunting. We are two souls who were meant to be together, and no matter how long the separation lasted, we found our way back. If you found yourself caught up in my story, if you were on my side through the confusion and the anger, please give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one, because believe me, there are plenty more shocking tales out there. And most importantly, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I want to know what you truly think. Was the adoption justified by her health, Or was it an unforgivable betrayal? I'll see you all in the next story.